The IMF, International Monetary Fund, has announced that its executive board has concluded 2025 Article IV consultation with Nigeria, projecting 3.4% GDP growth for 2025. And that's up from, I think, 3% from its last World Economic Outlook, where it put that growth at that 3%. Now, the IMF, of course, the consultation is a routine assessment of a country's economic performance and policy framework, providing evaluations and recommendations for improvement. So we're very happy to have Dr. Christian Ebeke, who, of course, is the IMF Resident Representative for Nigeria. Dr. Christian, it's good to see you again. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rotus.
We went through the document, lots of great recommendations in there. We're happy to have had you on the show before. I wanted to start with the recommendation to recalibrate the benchmark for oil downwards from $75. Can you talk about the reasoning behind that?
Yeah, thanks. And I just also want to thank the authorities, the different stakeholders, academics, civil societies, because, we spent a few days here in Nigeria, 2 weeks, to really put together this report, which is now available on imf.org. So your question is very important. As you know, the world economy is going through a lot of uncertainty from, tariff wars, but also impact on commodity prices, and tightening of financial conditions, etc. in the market. So a lot of volatility. When the Nigerian government put together the budget last year, they had an expectation that oil prices will be $75 a barrel, which was at the time an appropriate figure. It was what the market conditions were at the time. Fast forward to now, oil prices have gone down significantly. But they're also extremely volatile, as you know. Just a few weeks ago we were seeing oil prices at 80. Now we're back around the 65. At the same time, the budget also assumed that oil production will be 2 million barrels a day, will average 2 million barrels a day in Nigeria. For the first half of the year, what we are seeing is not the 2 million. So because of these changes in the parameters, we see a risk that hydrocarbon revenues to the budget will go down if the macro conditions remain the same. So it's important to recalibrate things and look carefully at the budget and see how some priority expenditures can be made, protecting the highly productive spendings to ensure that they'll continue to be positive to growth. But at the same time, also look at what additional revenue Nigeria can get. One of the key revenue source which could be available is really to realize fully the saving from the subsidy removal. Nigeria completed the subsidy reform last year in October. Our estimate is that, this fuel subsidy saving could amount to 2% of GDP. So it's important that, the discussion with NNPC and the Federation, get to a final stage where these savings can actually flow back and the money should be used productively, but also very importantly towards social protection, given where we are in terms of food insecurity. Our key recommendation really is recalibrating, the parameter within the budget, ensuring that good prioritization is made. You heard the Minister of Finance, Minister Edun, even yesterday in a statement, but also a few weeks before, he said the administration itself is aware of this risk and the administration will manage and implement the budget in a manner that remains consistent with macroeconomic stability. So it is good news to see that the authorities themselves are already looking into this and will take the appropriate measure. So on the fiscal overall, we are recommending a neutral fiscal stance, which means that the deficit to GDP ratio between 2024 and 2025 should not change. So it wouldn't be appropriate for Nigeria to have a higher deficit right now, given where we are in terms of inflation and given the pressure also on the central bank to maintain this tighter stance. So a neutral stance will balance the need to still keep some resources available for priority spending like social protection, high productive investment, but at the same time also take into account the new reality of lower hydrocarbon revenues.
Fantastic. Last time we had you on the show, you spoke a lot about the need to make sure that cash transfers are being made to the most vulnerable in society and getting that out there. One of your recommendations was also to scale it up. Can you talk about how that can be scaled upwards?
Yeah, I think, Rotus, it's a very important point. You know the background very well. Poverty is about estimated 46% in 2024 based on some assumptions. And food insecurity is also projected to be around 31 million Nigerian deemed, facing acute food insecurity risk. So this is where we are. And it's very important that this very nice program that the government and the World Bank have worked together on, which is really this cash transfer system where the authorities take advantage of the upgraded social register. 20 million households are basically part of this social register, and the framework with the World Bank assumes that people will be biometrically verified and the payment will be digitally made towards them. The goal is to reach out to 15 million households. So far, I think they have succeeded in reaching out to about 6 million households. So they are almost like halfway through that. So our recommendation is really to, first of all, accelerate the deployment of this cash transfer program so that the money can really reach out the most vulnerable quickly because they really need it. And then, the second point I want to make there is really when you have a social register of about 20 million households, if you think about an average family of 5, this is about 100 million Nigerians. Those people are fully verified. Those people have, they have been given, digital solutions to receive payment directly in their pockets. In the case of any future adverse shocks, you now have a mechanism readily available for you to deploy assistance to the most vulnerable, not just because of today's emergency, but also for tomorrow's emergency. So we really support this initiative, and our hope is really that the rollout can be accelerated so that this new social safety net, which is robust, can be deployed for future adverse shocks.
All right. That's on the fiscal side. On the monetary side, the recommendations also call for a maintenance of where we are with monetary policy for the Central Bank of Nigeria. Although some have said, hey, look, inflation is decelerating. You also pointed that out in your Article IV consultation that you've noted that inflation is decelerating. So shouldn't there be some room for a possible cut in rates? Your thoughts on that?
So there are many factors why inflation is trending down now, and it's a good news. Inflation is trending down. You look at the year-on-year changes, you look at some of the month-on-month changes, inflation is coming down. This is good news. And it's also saying that the measures taken by the central bank, tightening very, very robustly monetary policy in 2024, those measures are now taking effect. You always have some lag effect in terms of monetary policy transmission to inflation. The tightening has also helped Nigeria really on the external side because, the tighter stance meant higher interest rate on Naira-denominated securities, and that helped, FPI, foreign portfolio investors, to also come in and provide liquidity into the Nigerian FX market. So our recommendation on monetary policy is first to be data dependent. Why so? Because you live in a world now where you face acute uncertainty, a lot of volatility. You have to approach, MPC meetings, you really meeting by meeting approach and have all the data available to you, including inflation expectations, to be able to take the right decision. So be data dependent and decide based on all available information at your disposal.
Yeah.
Second, where we are now, real interest rate, ex post or ex ante, so interest rate adjusted for inflation or expected inflation, are already positive.
Yeah.
And it's very good in guiding inflation expectation. It's very good in making sure that we keep the momentum of the disinflationary trajectory going. And at the same time, it's also provided good impact on the FX market and on the external side by still making Naira securities attractive to foreign investors. Yeah. You still need these inflows, and you still need the positive interest rate to really guide inflation expectation down. So this is very, very important. The third point I want to make on monetary policy is that you also need a package, right? Monetary policy itself cannot achieve the full disinflationary target that is here. You also need to have fiscal policy helping. So that's why our recommendation for a neutral fiscal stance, so meaning the fiscal deficit in percent of GDP should not increase further compared to last year. These two stances, neutral fiscal stance, a tighter stance on monetary policy where you still have this real positive interest rate in the system, these two stances will help bring inflation down further and will keep the market also still positive and interested in Nigeria.
Fantastic. Hey, another thing that would keep costs down is if we had constant power in Nigeria and people wouldn't have to be fueling their generators. Your report also talks about addressing deep-rooted issues in the power sector. What do we need to do there to solve some of those issues?
I think it could be, it's very interesting, right? The first is, why are we interested in power in the report, right? It's because in the report, we make a lot of emphasis on the need to accelerate growth in Nigeria. And the authorities and the ministers, they have themselves say, Nigeria needs to grow at least at 7% annually, right? And durably. So for you to be able to achieve higher growth like this, you need productivity. And for this productivity to be unlocked, you need one of the key ingredients is really electricity. In the power sector in Nigeria, there are certain challenges, right? Challenges in terms of, the metering system that is not very, good. You also have all the issues around the grid, national grid, with the different, challenges that you see every week there. And then you have all the issue of the legacy debt, in the sectors that also make investment in the sectors unlikely at the current juncture. And we understand that the Nigerian government is working on a comprehensive plan, right? And we are very pleased to see that they are working very, very robustly on that. The plan, according to what we have been told so far, will include really a multi-pronged approach, right? From tariff reviews to ensure that it keeps a pro-poor lens when they will reviewing this. How to settle some of the legacy debt, including through some securitization, for example. But also all the investment, including private sector involvement in fixing the national grid. So we are very, very supportive of those efforts, again, because we are seeing electricity as one of the key ingredients for growth. Having a country powered through generators is not only costly financially for businesses and households, it's also costly in terms of environment, and it's something that Nigeria should definitely tackle.
Fantastic. And the final question, if I would, look, I'll keep you here for an hour because I would love your insights each time you're on the show. So I heard you mention 7% is what we should be looking at as far as GDP growth. But we did see the forecast at 3.4 for 2025, I think 3.2 for 2026. The last World Economic Outlook was 3% for Nigeria. Can we edge further than 3.5, 3.6 in the near term as far as GDP growth is concerned for Nigeria?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned, Rotus, it's very hard right now for any forecasters really to put this forecast out with high degree of certainty, right? So around most of the forecast you will see today, you have a lot of, the confidence band is quite wide, right? So in April, we had a forecast of 3% for GDP growth for Nigeria. That forecast was predicated on, we were seeing the peak of the tariff uncertainty globally. It was, early April, you can imagine. Some pressures in terms of capital outflows in many, many countries, including Nigeria. So when the forecast was made, the growth, the downward revision to growth in April was because of where we were in terms of global uncertainty and a lot of pressures. Now, some of this uncertainty has abated. Still high, still elevated global uncertainty, but not near the peak that we saw in early April. So this led us to upgrade slightly by 0.4 percentage point compared to April, our GDP growth forecast for this year. We also see some potential improvement in oil production. So now we have upgraded our oil production output to 1.7 million barrels a day. compared to what we had before. And we're also seeing some other reforms in the oil sectors, including some of the incentive, but also the indigenous companies that are really, really present in the sector. The FX market looks less volatile than back in April, so this also provides the private sector with some certainty in terms of planning, so we're also expecting non-oil output to grow a little bit faster. So putting all together, that's why we upgraded the forecast. Okay, now 3.4% is a good number. Is that enough for Nigeria? No, population growth is still high. In per capita terms, the way we see things in the medium term is that, Nigeria grows in per capita terms around 1.2, 1.3%, which is really, really still too low if we want to catch up with the rest of emerging market countries. So what should Nigeria do? And I think the report emphasizes it a lot. The last section of the report really focuses on how to accelerate growth through productivity. We talked about reform that you can do today. For example, the Naira is cheap currently. You will assume that the export sector should benefit a lot from this depreciation. But you still have certain bottlenecks even in the trade sector, like the pre-inspection shipment for export. This is a measure that we have identified in the report as a necessary cumbersome for exports, and this is something that could be tackled in order to really maximize, for example, the opportunity provided by the national single window, for example. And then you have all the reform that will take certain time, but they are also equally important: agriculture, power, all of these infrastructure, really high quality infrastructure that can really, really unlock productivity gains. Those are efforts that we think the administration can also look at in order to reach the higher growth level. And it's not just high level today. You want growth to be sustained over a certain period of time to be able to lift all these millions of people out of poverty.
Dr. Christian Ebeke, IMF Resident Representative for Nigeria, it is always a pleasure having you on the show to talk economics with us in Nigeria. Appreciate your time quite a lot. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Reuters.